Josh exhaled with a dramatic flare, his muscles tensing as he transitioned from downward dog to warrior pose. The morning sun toasted his bare chest, a thin sheen of sweat making him gleam like a well-oiled machine. He reveled in the peace of his hidden meadow, the last unspoiled corner of nature in a world dominated by virtual reality. Out of nowhere, a flash of turquoise caught his attention. Josh blinked, half convinced his mind was pulling a fast one on him. But no, there they were, two breathtakingly blue-skinned women with eyes as wide as saucers, staring at him with unabashed curiosity. "Holy smokes," Josh mumbled, stumbling out of his pose. He'd seen some strange stuff since the world went digital, but this was a new level. Were they some kind of advanced AI, or had he finally gone off the deep end? The taller of the two, because really, what else could they be, took a tentative step forward. "Greetings, Earthling," she said, her voice a melodious mix of wonder and hesitation. "We are Tyraxa and Nova from the Zarina Empire. We come in peace." Josh couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, that's a relief. I'd hate to have to defend Earth in my yoga pants." He flashed them a crooked grin, noting how their eyes widened at his nonchalance. "I'm Josh. Welcome to what's left of humanity's playground." Tyraxa and Nova exchanged a look that seemed to pass an entire conversation in silence. The shorter one, Nova if Josh's guess was correct, finally spoke up. "You're real, a living human." "Last time I checked," Josh replied, giving his abs a playful pat for emphasis. 100% genuine Homo sapiens at your service." The alien's jaws dropped in unison. "Impossible!" Tyraxa exclaimed, her chest heaving with rapid breaths. "Our records indicated that Earth's population had succumbed to virtual stasis centuries ago." Josh's smile dimmed a bit. "Yeah, well, most of them did. I'm one of the few holdouts who chose reality over fantasy." He waved a hand towards the overgrown ruins of a nearby city. "It's not always easy, but someone's got to keep the lights on." Nova tilted her head, her violet eyes blazing with curiosity. "You deliberately eschew the comforts of simulated paradise for what purpose?" Josh shrugged, suddenly self-conscious under their intense scrutiny. "To live, I guess. Really live. Feel the sun, smell the grass, push my body to its limits." He grinned, adding with a touch of playful flirtation, "and meet beautiful alien women who fall from the sky." To his surprise, both Tyraxa and Nova blushed a deeper shade of blue. Tyraxa cleared her throat. "Your planet was once renowned throughout the galaxy for its sensual pleasures. We had assumed such things were lost to time." "Oh, honey," Josh drawled with a grin, "you ain't seen nothing yet. But first things first, how about a snack? Some good old-fashioned Earth hospitality." He led them to a nearby fruit tree, plucking ripe peaches from its branches. The twins watched with wide-eyed fascination as Josh took a huge, juicy bite, juice dripping down his chin. "Go on," he encouraged, handing each of them a peach. "I promise they won't bite back." Tyraxa and Nova hesitantly accepted the fruit, their delicate fingers brushing against Josh's calloused hands. They sniffed the peaches cautiously before taking tentative nibbles. The effect was instantaneous. Their eyes widened in shock, then fluttered closed in sheer bliss. Soft moans of pleasure escaped their lips as they devoured the peaches with increasing gusto. Josh watched, mesmerized. He'd never seen anyone get so excited about fruit before. "It was kind of hot, actually." "Good, huh?" he asked, his voice a little huskier than he intended. Nova nodded vigorously, licking her fingers clean. "I've never experienced such intensity of flavor. Our nutrition capsules pale in comparison." "Nutrition capsules?" Josh's eyebrows shot up. "Oh man, you poor things. We've got a lot of work to do." Tyraxa finished her peach, her expression growing serious. "Josh of Earth, while we are grateful for your hospitality, I fear we cannot linger. We came only to bear witness to your world's final state before entering our own cryo-sleep." Josh's heart sank. "Cryo-sleep? But you just got here. And it sounds like you could use a vacation." "If you ask me." Tyraxa's shoulders slumped. "Our civilization is dying, Josh. We have searched the stars for compatible mates, for a way to reignite the passion that once defined our species, but we have found only disappointment." "So you're just giving up?" Josh's incredulity slipped through his tone. Tyraxa's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You cannot understand. We have exhausted every option." Josh interrupted, his tone gentler than his words. "You haven't tried everything. You haven't tried Earth." The twins stared at him, confusion evident on their stunning faces. Josh ran a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. "Look, I get it. The universe can be a cold, lonely place, but giving up? That's not living. That's just existing." He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to propose. "Stay. Just for a little while. Let me show you what it means to really feel alive." Tyraxa and Nova exchanged another of their silent, yet intense looks. Josh could practically see the wheels turning in their heads as they weighed the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, Nova spoke. "What exactly did you have in mind, Josh of Earth?" A slow grin spread across Josh's face. "Oh, you know, a little of this, a little of that. Swimming in crystal-clear lakes, watching the sunset paint the sky, dancing under the stars." He winked. "Maybe even a back rub or two if you're lucky." Tyraxa's cheeks darkened again, but a spark of interest lit up her eyes. "And you believe these activities could reignite our passion for life?" Josh's grin softened as he looked at the two beautiful, lost souls before him. "I think it's worth a shot. What have you got to lose?" Another moment of silent communication passed between the twins. Then, as one, they turned to Josh with tentative smiles. "Very well, Josh of Earth," Tyraxa said. "We accept your offer. Show us what it truly means to live." Josh's heart soared. He hadn't realized how much he'd been craving companionship until this moment. "Ladies," he said with an exaggerated bow, "you won't regret it. Now, who's up for a swim?" As he led them towards his favorite swimming hole, Josh couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to get a whole lot more interesting. And maybe, just maybe, he could save these alien beauties from a frozen fate. Little did he know, Tyraxa and Nova were harboring similar thoughts about their charming human host. The adventure was only beginning. Josh's bare feet slapped against the sun-warmed rocks as he led Tyraxa and Nova down the winding path to his favorite swimming hole. The alien twins followed closely behind, their graceful movements betraying their obvious curiosity about their surroundings. "Watch your step here," Josh called over his shoulder, pointing out a particularly treacherous section of the trail. "These rocks can be slippery." No sooner had he said the words than Nova let out a startled yelp. Josh whirled around just in time to see her lose her footing on a moss-covered stone. Without thinking, he lunged forward, catching her in his arms before she could hit the ground. Time seemed to stand still as their eyes met. Josh became acutely aware of Nova's soft curves pressed against his chest. Her skin was cool to the touch despite the warm day, and a faint, intoxicating scent, something like lilacs and stardust, filled his nostrils. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. Nova blinked rapidly, a deeper shade of blue creeping up her neck. Yes, thank you, Josh." He set her back on her feet, immediately missing the contact. Tyraxa watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. Her violet eyes narrowed slightly. "Perhaps we should proceed with more caution," Tyraxa suggested, a hint of something in her tone. Jealousy, protectiveness? Josh couldn't quite place it. "Right," he agreed, clearing his throat. "We're almost there anyway. You're going to love this place." A few minutes later, they emerged from the tree line into a secluded cove. A small waterfall cascaded down moss-covered rocks, feeding into a crystal-clear pool surrounded by lush vegetation. The late afternoon sun dappled the water's surface, creating a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. "By the stars!" Tyraxa breathed, her earlier reservations forgotten. "It's beautiful." Josh beamed with pride. "Wait till you feel how good the water is. Last one in's a rotten egg." Before the twins could react, he stripped off his shirt and dove headfirst into the pool. He surfaced a moment later, shaking water from his hair like a dog. "Come on in," he called. "The water's perfect." Tyraxa and Nova exchanged uncertain glances. "We do not have appropriate attire for aquatic activities," Tyraxa explained hesitantly. Josh laughed. "Who needs swimsuits? It's just us out here. Live a little." The twins' eyes widened in shock. "You suggest we disrobe entirely?" Nova squeaked. "Why not?" Josh shrugged, treading water. Nothing I haven't seen before. Well, okay, maybe not quite like you two, but you get the idea. No judgment here. He could practically see the internal struggle playing out on their faces. Finally, Nova squared her shoulders and began unfastening her form-fitting bodysuit. We came here to experience life, did we not? To rediscover passion and pleasure. She cast a shy glance at Josh. I, for one, am curious to feel this perfect water on my skin. Tyraxa's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. With a resigned sigh, she began removing her own clothing. Josh politely averted his eyes as the twins undressed, giving them a modicum of privacy. When he heard twin splashes, he turned to see Tyraxa and Nova surfacing near him, their blue skin glistening in the sunlight. "Well," he asked, grinning, "what's the verdict?" Nova let out a delighted laugh, spinning in a graceful circle. "It's wonderful! So cool and refreshing." Even Tyraxa couldn't hide her smile. "I must admit, this is quite invigorating." "Told you," Josh said with a wink. "Now, who wants to see who can hold their breath the longest?" The next hour passed in a blur of laughter, splashing, and increasingly ridiculous competitions. Josh taught the twins how to float on their backs, marveling at how quickly they took to the water. He tried not to stare at their lithe, athletic bodies, but it was a losing battle. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, they reluctantly climbed out of the pool. Josh tossed them each a soft towel he'd stashed nearby. "So," he said, running the towel through his hair, "what did you think of your first Earth swim?" Nova's eyes shone with excitement. "It was exhilarating. I've never felt so alive." Tyraxa nodded in agreement, though her expression was more reserved. "It was certainly a novel experience, though I fear we may have been rather immodest." Josh chuckled. "Trust me, modesty is overrated. Besides, you've got nothing to be ashamed of." He immediately regretted the words as both twins fixed him with intense stares. "I mean, you know what? Who's hungry? I make a mean campfire dinner." As they dressed and gathered their things, Josh couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. He'd managed to coax these reserved alien beauties out of their shells, if only for a little while. It was a start. But as they hiked back towards his camp, a nagging worry gnawed at the back of his mind. What would happen when their visit came to an end? Could he really let them go back to their dying world to sleep away eternity in cryopods? Josh pushed the thought aside. He had time to show Tyraxa and Nova everything Earth had to offer, time to make them fall in love with life again, and maybe, just maybe, time for them to fall in love with him too. As the trio approached Josh's camp, the scent of wood smoke and roasting vegetables filled the air. Josh had prepared a simple feast: corn on the cob, baked potatoes, and skewers of colorful bell peppers and mushrooms, all cooking over a crackling fire. "Welcome to Earth cuisine at its finest," Josh announced with a flourish. Tyraxa and Nova exchanged uncertain glances. "It smells intriguing," Tyraxa ventured. Josh chuckled. "Just wait till you taste it. Here, let me show you how it's done." He demonstrated how to shuck the corn, explaining the process as he worked. The twins watched in fascination, their delicate blue fingers mimicking his movements. "Like this?" Nova asked, holding up a perfectly shucked ear of corn. "Exactly," Josh beamed. "You're a natural." Tyraxa frowned, her attempt looking decidedly messier. "I fail to see the purpose of such inefficient food preparation." "The purpose?" Josh raised an eyebrow. "It's fun. Plus, food always tastes better when you work for it a little." As they settled around the fire to eat, Josh couldn't help but notice how the flickering flames cast an ethereal glow on the twins' azure skin. Nova eagerly bit into her corn, her eyes widening in delight. "Oh, it's so crisp and sweet." Tyraxa was more hesitant, delicately nibbling at a bell pepper. "The textures are quite varied," she observed. "Not unpleasant, but unfamiliar." Josh grinned. "That's the beauty of real food. Every bite's an adventure." As they ate, Josh regaled them with stories of his life on Earth, his decision to reject virtual reality, his struggles to maintain a semblance of civilization, and the joys he discovered in embracing the natural world. "But don't you get lonely?" Nova asked, her violet eyes shimmering with empathy. Josh's smile faltered for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. But then I remember all the people trapped in their VR pods, missing out on real experiences. I'd rather be lonely and alive than lost in a fake paradise. Tyraxa tilted her head, studying him intently. Your dedication to authenticity is admirable. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach. As the night wore on, Josh pulled out an old acoustic guitar. How about some music to end the evening, he suggested. The twins leaned forward, intrigued. Josh began to strum a gentle melody, his fingers dancing across the strings as he sang. His rich baritone filled the night air. Nova swayed to the rhythm, her eyes closed in bliss. Even Tyraxa couldn't hide her fascination, her foot tapping unconsciously to the beat. When the song ended, Nova clapped enthusiastically. That was beautiful. We have nothing like this in our world. Really? Josh asked, surprised. No music at all? Tyraxa shook her head. Our society values efficiency above all else. Such frivolous pursuits were deemed unnecessary generations ago. Josh's heart ached at the thought. Well, we'll have to fix that. Music isn't just frivolous, it's essential. It speaks to the soul. He played a few more songs, teaching the twins simple harmonies and encouraging them to sing along. Their voices, initially hesitant, grew stronger and more confident with each chorus. As the fire died down to embers, Josh noticed Nova shivering slightly. Without thinking, he draped his arm around her shoulders. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into his embrace. Tyraxa's eyes narrowed at the gesture. Perhaps we should retire for the evening, she suggested, a hint of frost in her tone. Josh nodded, suddenly aware of the intimate moment he'd created. Right, of course. I've got a spare tent set up for you too. We've got a big day ahead tomorrow. I thought we'd go for a hike, maybe do some yoga in the mountains. As the twins retreated to their tent, Josh couldn't shake the feeling that he was playing with fire. These weren't just any women, they were aliens, representatives of a dying civilization. And yet, he couldn't deny the growing attraction he felt toward both of them. Sleep did not come easily that night. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Josh led the twins on a challenging hike up a nearby mountain, pushing their alien physiology to its limits. The sun was barely cresting the horizon when Josh, Tyraxa, and Nova set out for their hike. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, and the sky above was a brilliant canvas of pink and orange. Josh led the way with a confident stride, his breath coming in easy puffs as he navigated the rocky trail. Tyraxa and Nova followed closely, their blue skin shimmering in the early light, their alien eyes scanning the unfamiliar terrain with a mix of wonder and apprehension. How are you two holding up? Josh called back, casting a concerned glance over his shoulder. Tyraxa, her breath coming in measured bursts, nodded with a determined look. We are managing, though this altitude is quite different from our usual environments. Nova, on the other hand, seemed to be struggling more. Her usually smooth and graceful movements were now slightly erratic, her breaths coming in quick, shallow bursts. She wiped sweat from her brow with a small, somewhat shaky hand. I'm not used to this kind of exertion, she admitted, her voice tinged with both embarrassment and awe. It's exhilarating but also exhausting. Josh grinned. That's the point. This hike is going to push you, but the view at the top is worth it. Trust me. Tyraxa, ever the pragmatist, shot Josh a skeptical look. You have said that about many things. So far, you have been mostly accurate. Josh chuckled. Glad to hear I'm not a complete fraud. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. They continued on, the trail winding higher and higher. As the elevation increased, the terrain became more challenging. Josh found himself guiding the twins through rocky outcrops and steep inclines. Despite their alien grace, Tyraxa and Nova were clearly struggling with the physical demands. Still, they persevered, motivated by Josh's encouragement and the promise of the breathtaking view he'd promised. Finally, after hours of arduous climbing, they reached the summit. Josh stood aside, letting the twins catch their breath and take in the view. The sight before them was nothing short of spectacular. Below, the landscape stretched out like a sprawling quilt of colors, forests of deep green, fields of golden grass, and rivers that gleamed like silver ribbons in the morning light. The sky above was a brilliant azure, dotted with a few fluffy clouds. It was as if they were standing on the edge of the world. Tyraxa and Nova gaped in awe. I have never seen anything like this, Tyraxa said, her voice barely more than a whisper. It's magnificent, Nova breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Josh, standing beside them, felt a swell of pride. Glad you like it. This is why I chose to live in reality. Moments like these make everything worth it. Tyraxa looked at him, her expression thoughtful. You were right. This is indeed a profound experience. They spent a while at the summit, taking in the view and snapping some photos with Josh's old digital camera. Tyraxa and Nova were fascinated by the concept of photographs, immortalizing moments in time, and they eagerly posed for a few pictures, their blue skin standing out vividly against the backdrop of the natural world. After their break, Josh led them to a flat area where he'd set up a small yoga mat. Time for some of that yoga I promised, he said with a grin. It'll help stretch out those muscles after the hike. Tyraxa and Nova looked at the yoga mat with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. We have seen you practice this, Tyraxa said, but we are not sure how effective it will be for us. Trust me, Josh said. It's all about balance and breathing. Plus, it'll give you a chance to stretch out those muscles after the hike. He demonstrated a few poses, his movements fluid and controlled. Tyraxa and Nova followed suit, their blue skin contrasting sharply with the green mat. It was clear they were not accustomed to the physical demands of yoga, their movements stiff and somewhat awkward at first. But as Josh guided them through the exercises, they began to loosen up, their bodies finding a new rhythm. Nova was the first to fully embrace the practice, her movements becoming more graceful as she flowed through the poses. Tyraxa, though initially hesitant, gradually became more relaxed, her precision in each pose revealing her natural athleticism. Josh watched with satisfaction, pleased to see them adapting so quickly. Looking good, ladies. Just remember to breathe and stay focused. As the yoga session wound down, Josh noticed Tyraxa and Nova seemed more relaxed and at ease. Their earlier fatigue had given way to a newfound sense of tranquility. Feeling better? Josh asked, giving them an encouraging smile. Tyraxa nodded, her eyes shining with newfound appreciation. Yes, this is quite invigorating. I can see why you enjoy it. Nova beamed, her earlier struggles forgotten. This was wonderful. I feel more connected to my body and to this place. Josh smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Glad to hear it. Now, how about we head back down and get some lunch? I've got a great spot in mind. The descent was much easier than the climb, and they made good time back to the base of the mountain. Josh led them to a small clearing where he had set up a picnic lunch. Fresh fruit, sandwiches, and a few homemade pastries were spread out on a blanket. Dig in, Josh said, gesturing to the spread. Tyraxa and Nova eagerly sat down, their alien curiosity extending to Earth food once more. Josh had prepared a variety of options, and the twins tried everything with a mixture of enthusiasm and caution. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. They shared stories and laughed over their mishaps during the hike, the earlier tension between them seemingly melting away. Josh noticed how relaxed and at ease the twins seemed, their earlier reservations giving way to genuine enjoyment. He felt a pang of satisfaction, knowing that he was making a difference in their lives, even if only for a short time. As they finished their lunch, Josh looked at Tyraxa and Nova, his expression thoughtful. You know, I've been thinking. There's a lot more to see and do around here. If you're up for it, we could explore some more. There's a beautiful lake not far from here, and I know a few hidden spots that are really something special. Tyraxa and Nova exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Tyraxa nodded. We would like that. There is much more we wish to experience before we must return. Josh's heart soared at their response. Great. Then let's make the most of it. We've got a lot of adventures ahead. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to set out for their next destination, Josh couldn't help but feel a growing sense of hope. Perhaps there was a chance to show Tyraxa and Nova that life was worth living, even in the face of the vast, uncertain universe. And maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to make their visit last a little longer. The day stretched out before them, full of promise and possibilities, and Josh was determined to make every moment count.